CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Live from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Juliet Mann. Our top stories this hour. At least 96 people are dead in Hawaii's worst natural disaster. The search efforts continue for hundreds missing in the historic town of Lahaina.
My 9-year-old couldn't. She just kept telling me, Mom, I can't. Please, Mom.
We hear the harrowing story of one family's escape from the flames as anger grows over the lack of warning from authorities. Donald Trump could be facing his 4th indictment of the year, this time in Georgia, over accusations he tried to overturn the 2020 election results. And China releases new guidelines to promote market stability and attract more foreign investment. Search continues for hundreds of people still missing on the Hawaiian island of Maui, days after wildfires left at least 96 people dead. Much of the historic resort town of Lahaina has been destroyed in what's become the deadliest wildfire in U.S. modern history. Firefighters, assisted by members of the U.S. National Guard, are still battling flare-ups while rescue teams comb through the town's charred ruins in search of victims. The state governor's warned the death toll is likely to rise. Well, anger's growing among Lahaina's residents over why authorities didn't issue any warnings. Our correspondent Nitza Soledad Perez reports from Maui.
The wildfire's death toll continues to rise here in Hawaii. Only 2 bodies have been identified at this time. Now, canine teams are searching for cadavers, and they started working only on Saturday. So far, only 3% of the impacted area has been searched. That's why officials are saying that they expect to find more bodies. Now, firefighters are still extinguishing flare-ups in Lahaina and other parts of West Maui. Access is still restricted to residents, and they continue to feel frustrated. They want to go back to their hometown. Hawaii Governor Josh Green and the FEMA director surveyed all the area that was destroyed by the fires. Now, I had the opportunity to talk to the Maui County mayor and ask him what I continue to hear from the residents, why they were not warned. They say they didn't hear any fire alarms, they didn't get any text messages. So I posed a question to him. This was his answer.
Generally speaking, we do not have sirens for fires.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody in any other state does. The sirens tell you to go in and turn on your television and listen to the news reports. It's usually for tsunami warnings and hurricanes. We don't want people, if there's a fire, going back into their home and turning on their TV. We'd rather they take evasive action. So I think there's a lot of talk about people maybe misunderstanding the purpose.
And that explanation is definitely not enough for the people that lost loved ones, all their belongings, their home. Meanwhile, in other parts of Maui, life is continuing with very, very little interruption. It feels that West Maui is an island unto itself. Nitza Soledad Perez, CGTN, Maui.
Akane Siva is a survivor of the Maui wildfires. Her husband and 3 children were forced to flee on foot after their car got stuck in traffic just meters from the flames.
It went from blue skies to gray to black. And all we seen was embers from fire that we had no idea what's going on. There was no siren, nothing. And it was just heartbreaking seeing our community, my neighbors, like lots of elderly people trying to make it down the stairs just to get into their car. Everything's coming so quick. We could feel the heat. It's sitting in our car. And out of nowhere, I just hear banging on this window. And everything's dark, so I look to my left, and I'm literally right next to this car where this grandmother is yelling for help. And she's just telling me, please help me, I have a baby. And I just, you know, at that time, I'm like, what do I do? So of course I jump out, I tell my husband, you tend to the grandma, I'm grabbing the baby. I run out, I run around her car, open up the back, the baby's on her side. Right behind her, I reached over, I grabbed this baby. She was about 2.5, 3 years old. I grabbed her, she was sitting on a blanket, I wrapped her with the blanket and I told my kids, you guys run. Don't turn around and look for me. And my 9-year-old couldn't. She just kept telling me, Mom, I can't. Please, Mom. So I ran this way. Baby was behind her. I didn't know that. Pulled her over. This is where we ran. In the dark, not being able to see anything. This wall here is the only thing that was keeping us from burning.
At least 21 people are dead and dozens are missing after a landslide in India's northern Himalayas. Worshippers were attending a pilgrimage in the state of Himachal Pradesh. A rescue operation is underway to account for at least 20 missing people. Heavy rains and melting glaciers have brought deadly flash floods to the mountainous region, neighbouring Pakistan and Nepal over the past 2 years. At least 36 people are feared dead at a jade mine in northern Myanmar after being swept into a lake by a landslide. The country produces about 90% of the world's jade, and people often risk their lives picking through unstable earth and rubble excavated by mining companies searching for small pieces of the semi-precious stone. A tornado in eastern China's Jiangsu province has killed 2 people and injured 15 others. The wounded have been taken to hospital and affected residents have been relocated. The tornado also damaged farm buildings and greenhouses in the region. Rescue and relief efforts are underway. Former US President Donald Trump is set to find out this week if he'll face his 4th indictment of the year for his alleged attempts to overturn the 2020 election results. The stage is set in Georgia, where the Fulton County District Attorney has signaled that charges in her years-long investigation are imminent. Despite his legal woes, Trump remains the front-runner for the 2024 Republican presidential nomination. He says all the investigations against him are part of a coordinated effort by Democrats to undermine his candidacy. Our correspondent John Terrett's been following events from New York. Great to see you, as always, John. So, a bit of a tale of 2 Trumps this weekend.
And Juliet, an extraordinary thing played out on television screens here over the weekend. It is very important to remember that President Trump, as you said in the intro, remains the #1 front runner by far for the Republican ticket in next year's presidential election. So because of that, all the candidates are required to turn up over the weekend in Iowa, in the Midwest of the country, at the state fairgrounds in Des Moines, the capital, and to mix with the people of Iowa ahead of their caucuses in the early part of 2024. And he did that, and he brought with him loads of low-level Republican politicians from the state of Florida just to have a jab at his #1 rival, who's the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, even though Ron DeSantis is many, many, many percentage points behind. And of course, President Trump was mobbed by his supporters. Extraordinary scenes in Iowa, and then 1,400 kilometers away, a very different story playing out at the same time. Evidence revealed on television here that the Trump team may well have tried to tamper with rural voting equipment in one part of Georgia in order to gain access to the information on them. And more seriously than that, in Fulton County, which is in the north and the central part of the state of Georgia, which includes Atlanta, the big capital city there, the district attorney in Georgia preparing to indict President Trump on yet another criminal charge. This one would be election interference. So you had those extraordinary scenes, which I believe you just saw in the intro, of Trump in Iowa in the sunshine. And then in the deep south of the country, we had all this going on, and security is now very, very tight around the courthouse where the grand jury is apparently meeting right now. Juliet?
So, John, what are the details then of this legal challenge against Trump?
The Fulton County District Attorney is called Fani Willis. Okay, and she, we are told, is seeking 12 indictments in total against 12 individuals, including President Trump, and the main charge is election subversion. In other words, trying to alter the outcome of the legal election. Now, the charge that is being brought is an extraordinary one, in my view. It sounds more like the mob or the mafia. The charge is called the Racketeer Influence and Corrupt Organization Act of Georgia. Now, there is a federal one which is very similar to that, but this is Georgia's own law, and it's a bit more wide-ranging than the one coming out of Washington, D.C. And the reason we think that the indictment is imminent is this, because also over the weekend, the former lieutenant governor, or lieutenant governor as they say here, of Georgia, Jeff Duncan, said that he was being deposed by the grand jury on Tuesday. Now, Fani Williams takes 2 days in order to lay out her case always. There are 2 grand juries down there. One meets on Monday and Tuesday, the other on Thursday and Friday, so therefore we assume this grand jury, because it's all secret, you understand, therefore we assume this grand jury is the one that will end up indicting President Trump, and therefore the indictment could come late on Tuesday or maybe on Wednesday or certainly this week. Finally, if this happens, it will be the 4th criminal indictment for the former president. The others are in New York, in Florida and Washington, D.C. And on Truth Social today, President Trump continues to insist that that telephone call, the one where he asked to find 11,780 more votes, one more than we need, President Trump insists on Truth Social that telephone call was the perfect call. Juliet?
Well, it's interesting, it's astonishing that he's still front runner for the Republican candidate for 2024. John Terrett, always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Niger's coup leaders have announced plans to prosecute deposed President Mohamed Bazoum for high treason and undermining national security. The country's military is resisting international pressure to give up power. Bazoum has been under house arrest since the military staged a coup about 3 weeks ago. The West African regional bloc ECOWAS has threatened military action to restore civilian rule, but it's so far failed to follow through. China's foreign ministry has strongly condemned a terrorist attack targeting Chinese engineers in Pakistan. The incident occurred near the southwestern port of Gwadar when the group's convoy was ambushed. 2 militants were killed and a separatist group in Pakistan claimed responsibility for the attack. Meanwhile, Pakistan's ambassador to China has also condemned the act.
Pakistan and China are very closely cooperating on the issue of terrorism, and we are both victim of terrorism and extremism. We have lost so many precious lives of our nationals in these terrorist attacks, so we feel the pain of each other. And that's why there's a strong cooperation. I also understand that there have been certain attacks in the past on our Chinese friends in Pakistan. We really condemn all these attacks. But I would like to assure my Chinese friends also that this is a common challenge that we are facing. I would like to seek their understanding on this.
More drone and missile attacks have hit the Ukrainian city of Odessa, which injured at least 3 people. The supermarket was also damaged by debris from falling missiles. The Black Sea port city has been repeatedly attacked since Russia withdrew from a UN-brokered grain deal last month. Divisions have emerged in Austria and Switzerland after the 2 traditionally neutral countries declared their intent to join the European Air Defence Initiative, known as Sky Shield. Major right-wing parties claim it would bring the 2 Alpine republics too close to NATO. Our correspondent Johannes Pleschberger reports from Austria.
Aiming a 45mm gun at an airborne target. Air defense exercises have increased in Austria since the beginning of the war in Ukraine. Senior military figures say the country is in desperate need of weapons.
We only have the capability to have short-range air defense, and what we are missing is the medium and long-range air defense. And what we are hoping now is, with Sky Shield, that we can close this gap within Austria.
Through Sky Shield, member countries want to coordinate the collective purchase of air defense systems and, most importantly, share radar information of the location and direction of hostile missiles. Switzerland and Austria, however, plan to join a light version of the program, where the decision on the military response remains in Bern and Vienna.
Despite the limited membership, many Austrians fear Sky Shield will compromise the country's long-held neutrality. Opinion polls show around half the population approves of the scheme.
I think it's always good to work together and not to think as alone.
For Austria, it's maybe better to have a defense, so it's quite okay. But if you are neutral and offensive, it's quite questionable.
I think that everyone should just sort themselves out and not look for other people to drag into their stuff.
We shouldn't be thinking about arms and gearing up.
Austria's far-right Freedom Party is calling for a referendum to stop the country joining the defense initiative. But the commander of Austria's Air Force says if neutral Switzerland can sign up to Sky Shield, then so can Austria.
We are not joining an alliance. This is an initiative launched by Germany, a nation state which has invited us to participate in this air defense procurement process.
Apart from Austria and Switzerland, all other 17 participating countries are NATO members or applicants. A number of experts in Austria say joining Sky Shield will not compromise neutrality. The Russian Academy of Sciences in Moscow disagrees, claiming that by joining the scheme, Vienna and Bern will be compelled to follow the West's common defense policy or face possible US and EU sanctions. Austria's government says it will invite military personnel to share all necessary information with opposition leaders in an attempt to convince the wider political spectrum and the wider public. Johannes Bleschberger, CGTN, Hollabrunn, Austria.
You're watching CGTN. Still ahead. China introduces plans to improve its business environment to attract more foreign capital.
Roger, Ricky, loud, clear.
We can try out the wild and crazy ideas.
Nothing can stop an idea whose time is coming. This idea is coming.
I actually feel quite comfortable in isolation.
We should all be very basic when we're trying to save the world.
Awesome!
We hope it will happen. We have to live in hope.
Facing the unknown is always difficult. In a world in turmoil, it's easy to lose orientation. But when the storms come, we have to see the possibilities. Reinvent. Find new opportunities. Discover a path forward. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. At least 96 people are dead in Hawaii's worst natural disaster. The search efforts continue for hundreds missing in the historic town of Lahaina. Donald Trump could be facing his fourth indictment of the year, this time in Georgia, over accusations he tried to overturn the 2020 election results. Fighting is increasing in parts of Sudan, where rival forces have been battling for control for the country for 4 months. The conflict has brought daily battles to the streets of the capital, Khartoum, and there have also been recent clashes in the western Sudanese city of Nyala and southern Darfur. Nearly 3 million people have fled the country. Diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict between the army and paramilitary forces have so far failed. Health officials warn Sudan is facing the risk of major disease outbreaks, with morgues stretched to breaking point and bodies piling up in the streets. Mukesh Kapila is a former United Nations resident and humanitarian coordinator for Sudan. Thank you ever so much for coming on the programme. In terms of the fighting, what is the current situation in Sudan?
I think the fighting, as you've said, has widened. The focus of it is still Khartoum, but intense fighting continues in the western part, which is in Darfur, and also towards the south in the Kordofan states. And probably there are small-scale fighting taking place all over the country. So it's a pretty generalized picture now.
So we've heard that there are millions of people who've had to flee, and there are other people who desperately need aid. What do people there need most?
Well, they need everything. So about 4 million have left their homes, 1 million are refugees, and 3 million are internally displaced. And the UN has asked for roughly $2.5 billion, which they received about $500 million. But the logistics of aid supply are considerable. And of course, there is looting and security problems that stop aid coming through. I think the principal requirements remain that of food, nutrition, as well as healthcare. There have been attacks on hospitals. There is shortage of medicines and essential drugs for chronic conditions and for acute conditions. And of course, food I have already mentioned. Then, of course, there is degradation of water and sanitation services, and that is going to make life worse as the rains come to one part of the country and droughts continue in other parts. So it's a pretty dire situation for literally all human needs.
So a desperate situation, and you've mentioned there that the weather could turn, potentially exacerbating the problem. So let's talk about resolution. Why have the diplomatic efforts fallen flat?
Well, I think we can certainly commend the efforts of the different initiatives for trying their very best, and everyone is involved, whether it is globally or regionally. But the reality of the matter is that the two parties are not ready to make peace because they have got plenty of fight left in them. In other words, it's an existentialist struggle, and they have plenty of means to wage their fighting, thanks to the stocks they've built up and thanks to support they've been receiving. And quite honestly, the incentives for them are not there to make peace, and hence the diplomatic efforts have failed. That's one thing. And because it is a fighting, the strategy of which is to eliminate the other side, the scope for compromise is very little. And that's where I think other diplomatic efforts, of which there have been many, and maybe the diplomatic efforts need to unite and come together as a combined effort to try and put more pressure on the fighting groups.
So you say the fighting groups have still got a lot of fight in them, and that the scope for compromise is really tiny. So what do you think it would take for a breakthrough? You mentioned there diplomatic efforts uniting. What else?
I think the current efforts, for example, with sanctions, should continue. I think those who are arming the two sides should stop doing that. Also, they should step up humanitarian aid more, especially to neighboring countries, because that's where more and more people are going to come. And stabilizing the neighboring countries is extremely important for peace within Sudan. And then, quite honestly, there aren't that many more international levers up the international community's sleeve. Continuous effort has to be made, pressurizing the both sides on an even basis, and I think strengthening the Sudanese people so that they can mount their own resistance against the harms that are being done to them. But I'm sorry to say there aren't any easy or magic solutions to this one.
There certainly aren't. Well, and thank you very much for filling us in on the latest situation. That's Mukesh Kapila, former United Nations resident and humanitarian coordinator for Sudan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Latvia's Prime Minister has announced he and his government will resign later this week. Krišjānis Kariņš failed to reconfigure the government after his current coalition partners rejected his proposals for a cabinet reshuffle. It's up to the president to give a mandate to a new potential prime minister to try and form a government. The Chinese Commerce Ministry says it will impose anti-dumping tariffs on polycarbonate imports from Taiwan starting Tuesday. It says the measure aims to curb damage to the Chinese mainland's polycarbonate industry. Polycarbonate is a plastic material used in electronic appliances and medical devices. The move comes after the deputy leader of the Taiwan region, Lai Ching-te, made a stopover in the United States during a trip to Paraguay. China says it will further improve the business environment to attract more foreign capital and has introduced plans to enhance services and promote equal rights for all investors. CGTN's correspondent Sun Chen-Yuan reports.
The State Council, or China's cabinet, issued 24 new guidelines on Sunday to optimize the business climate for foreign enterprises and investors. Authorities say the policy document shows China's determination to press ahead with reform and opening up with concrete measures.
We hope investors and foreign invested enterprises from various countries can fully feel that these measures demonstrate the Chinese government's unwavering determination to further opening up. We also hope they can fully enjoy the benefits brought by the implementation of policies achieving common development with the Chinese economy.
The Sunday document aims to attract more foreign capital while promoting equal rights and further protecting the interests of multinational corporations and investors. Chinese authorities also promise stronger fiscal supports and tax incentives. Despite downward pressure and global challenges, China remains a popular destination for foreign capital. In the first half of 2023, China had over 23,000 additional foreign enterprises, an increase of 35.7%. An official says foreign enterprises have maintained confidence in the Chinese market, especially in the high-tech manufacturing sector.
The actual use of foreign investment in high-tech manufacturing increased by 28.8% in the first half of this year. This indicates that foreign enterprises have sufficient confidence in investing in China. The great potential in China's manufacturing industry will also bring sustained profit opportunities for foreign enterprises.
Authorities say they will accelerate the implementation of the guidelines and continue to foster a better business environment for foreign investors and enterprises. Sun Tianyuan, CGTN, Beijing.
Saudi Arabian football team Al Hilal have agreed a deal with Paris Saint-Germain for Brazilian player Neymar. He's due to have a medical, and the fee is reported to be in the region of $98 million. Neymar will reportedly earn around $165 million a year, 6 times what he was earning at PSG. He became the world's most expensive player when he joined the French champions for $244 million in 2017. Al Hilal had tried to sign Lionel Messi and Kylian Mbappe earlier this summer, but both those players turned down the move. Our headlines again. At least 96 people are dead in Hawaii's worst natural disaster. Search efforts continue for hundreds missing in the historic town of Lahaina. Donald Trump could be facing his 4th indictment of the year, this time in Georgia, over accusations he tried to overturn the 2020 election results. And China releases new guidelines to promote market stability and attract more foreign investment. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. We're back with more news at the top of the hour. Coming up next, though, it's World Insight with Chen Wei. For now, from all the team here in London, goodbye.
Welcome to weather forecast over to Europe. You could see on Tuesday we're going to have light or moderate rainfall stretching from the west all the way to parts of northern Europe, and also the rain conditions will cover parts of western Russia. Getting to Wednesday, the rain conditions will push eastward a little bit, so still light or moderate intensity of rain covering majority of northern Europe. At the same time, some light rainfall picking up in parts of Central Europe like Germany, Poland, and also parts of the Balkans. Speaking of the temperature fluctuation under influence of the ridge of high, the daily highs in parts of Central and also the Eastern Europe will rise a little bit. For example, in countries like Germany, Poland, even Belarus over the next 2 days. So zooming to city forecast, we're going to have 19 for daily highs in Copenhagen, a chance of showers on Wednesday, lower 20s for daily highs in Stockholm, Helsinki, partly sunny sky, and the maximum temperatures be around 28 if you're living in Minsk, Kiev, and also Moscow, clear sky. Well, back to Western Europe, you will have a chance of showers with daily highs in upper 20s in London, Paris, around 10 degrees warmer in the city of Madrid, lowering chances. Well, that's it for now. Stay tuned for more city forecast.